BhagavatSanga program. As you all know, this is the Srimad Bhagavatam program where devotees read the prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam and share the verses and their realizations. Currently, we are reading King Prthu Maharaj's prayers. These are beautiful prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, from verse 23 to 31. Today, we have a very wonderful devotee, Prashanth Prabhu, who will be sharing the verses and his realizations. Hare Krishna, Prashanth Prabhu. Over to you.
Hare Krishna Matji, Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Today we are going through Prthu Maharaj's prayers. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, verse 23 to 31. And we will start with invocation prayers. First off, thank you to Satisar Prabhu, Mataji, Veena Mataji for giving me this opportunity. And please forgive me if I make any mistakes and say anything incorrectly. With that, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srimivadi Paschati Deshtarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, and as we're reading from Bhagavatam, we will recite Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So we will start with just background on Prthu Maharaj. So Prthu Maharaj is a Saktivesh avatar. So he's a direct, incarnation of Lord Vishnu and Krishna. And I put some verses here from previous chapters in Canto 4 that talk about Prthu Maharaj and explain, what Prthu Maharaj has done and is doing, and we'll get into the story where Lord Vishnu appears. So Prthu Maharaj, the sages explain that he's the male plenary expansion of Lord Vishnu, and he was born just from the energy of the Lord. So he's not from a womb, he's not taking a material birth, but he's coming just directly from the energy of the Lord. And then he is supposed to be the first among kings in the that will establish what it means to be a king. And this next verse, it talks about what Prthu Maharaj did and what Prthu Maharaj meant to everybody. It says, to the citizens of earth, King Prthu Maharaj was as good as a father. He gave them, I think in the verses it explains that everybody was able to subsist on everything that Prthu Maharaj was able to provide for them. So there was nobody in the world that had any insecurities in terms of food or residence or anything like that because of what King Prthu did. He built, I think, he built many forts, temples, places of worship. He built residences for people. He did everything that that you could do. And then go back here. So then this next verse here is from 19, where this is the start of the story, where Lord Indra gets jealous of Prthu Maharaj doing the Ashwamedh Yajna, which is the last sacrifice. So I won't go into that full story, but this is where this is the verse where that happens, and then we get into the 16, 21, and 22, which is right before the verses that we will talk through. So what's happened now is the pastime has happened. King Prthu Maharaj and Indra are standing there, and Lord Krishna comes and says that he is, he gives Prthu Maharaj a benediction, that he can ask for anything, which is this verse. He says, "My dear king, I'm very captivated by your qualities and behavior, and thus, I'm favorably inclined towards you." And Lord Vishnu says, "You may ask any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performance of sacrifice." So what we can understand there, and we'll get into it later as well, is Lord Vishnu is saying that it's not just the sacrifice that has endeared me to you, it's also that you have actually surrendered, and that Prthu Maharaj is fully surrendered to the Lord. And that's what endears Krishna and Lord Vishnu to a devotee. So these next two verses, 21 and 22, I think Lord Vishnu is about to walk away, and he realizes that Prthu Maharaj is wanting to pay obeisances and speak. So this is Prthu Maharaj actually doing that. It says he's eyes full of tears, voice faltering, and not able to speak, and he remains paying obeisances. And then the next verse, he actually starts speaking and offering the prayers to Vishnu. So then we will start with the verses. So I won't go through the full, all the reading the full verse. I think everybody should do that, but I'll just go through my realizations for each verse. So this verse, the Lord, I think we've seen in many of the prayers, devotees always start with offering glories of the Lord, right, and glorifying the Lord first. And King Prthu Maharaj does the same thing. He starts with saying, you're the best of the demigods who can offer any benedictions. And he says, therefore, should any learned person ask you for benedictions meant for living in entities bewildered by modes of nature? What can we understand from that is, King Prthu Maharaj is asking us to think about what does a common person ask for versus what does a spiritually awakened person ask for. And Prabhupada beautifully explains in the purport that, if you're a karmi and you're in this situation, you might ask for higher planetary systems or something like that. If you're a jnani, you might ask that, hey, I want to merge into your Brahman effulgence. And if you're a yogi, some other yogi like Ashtanga yogi, you might ask for siddhis or other powers. And like we see Hiranyakashipu ask for all of those benedictions from Brahma. So Prthu Maharaj is saying here, hey, this is not what a spiritually awakened devotee should be asking for. They shouldn't be asking for anything material. And what that means is, material benedictions are available to anyone in the material world. So, if we perform the rituals or we perform the sacrifice, whatever material things that we can ask for, we will be able to get through hard work. And once we accumulate sufficient karma, we'll be able to get it. So, Prthu Maharaj is saying, why ask for something material that's available to everybody? It's available to even somebody in the hellish conditions, like in the hellish planets. If they, do good things and develop karma, then they can get something material. They don't have to go to the Lord for that. So then the Lord said, then Prthu Maharaj says, my dear Lord, you can certainly bestow merging into your existence, but I do not wish such a benediction, which is, he's saying, I don't want to merge into your Brahman effulgence. And Prthu Maharaj explains in the next verse why he says that. So, he says that in this verse, and I bolded the in red what he explains. He says, a benediction in which there is no existence of nectarian beverage of your lotus feet, that's not something that I wish to have. So he says that, the existence without Krishna's lotus feet is the same as no existence. It's I think in some of the other prayers we've read that an existence without Krishna is the same as killing our soul or killing. It's the same as death. So that's similarly what Prthu Maharaj is saying. It's that without the attention to Krishna's lotus feet or putting Krishna's lotus feet in the center or even serving the lotus feet, which is the next point that he makes, there's no real reason to exist. So we have to have Krishna in the center, and we have to perform devotional service to Krishna, and that's what is true meaningful existence. And that's what, connecting to the previous verse, that's what a spiritually awakened devotee should ask for. Then the next two lines, he says, I want the benediction of at least 1 million years, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories, which is the main part of your lotus feet of Krishna, from the mouths of your pure devotees. So those last two things here are important, right? It tells us that a spiritually realized devotee like Maharaj understands that the topmost service that we can do, and the topmost service we can do, and something we can ask Krishna for, is to engage our senses. And how should we? And there's many examples of other prayers where people ask for different things, but it's always to be engaged in Krishna's service in some way. And Prthu Maharaj asks for having his ears, to be able to continually hear the glories of the Lord. And the second piece is even more important, and Prabhupada explains this in some of the other verses as well, and is you have to hear it from the mouths of pure devotees. Prabhupada says that you should never hear the glories of Krishna from a non-devotee, because if you hear it from a non-devotee, he says it becomes ornamental, which it means that it's just there for decoration. It's not there for spiritual realization. So here, Prthu Maharaj says the same thing. We have to hear about the glories, but it's not just hearing about the glories, it's hearing about the glories from a pure devotee. So that's, that really stresses the importance of devotee association, sadhusanga, and, surrendering to a guru who glorifies the Lord. And Prabhupada also says that if we desire to hear about the glories of the Lord, we'll inevitably be, given touch with devotees. And Prabhupada says that there are innumerable devotees who are eternally glorifying the Lord. And my realization is we are fortunate to be able to be in devotee association, that we have access to devotees and being able to hear about the glories of the Lord from devotees. The next verse, Prabhu Maharaj explains, why we should hear from devotees, the importance of listening to devotees in association. And he says, you're glorified by selected verses uttered by great personalities. There's countless people that glorify the Lord. And he says, such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. And I thought this was really interesting because, and how can somebody know what saffron smells like unless you are told by somebody else who already knows that this is saffron and this is what saffron smells like? So that's the same thing as devotee association, right? So if we and hearing from somebody that's already spiritually realized, if we are able to hear from somebody that already knows what realization looks like and is, then we will be able to understand it as well. So the things that I wanted to convey and from the purport is, if we hear from devotees, right, it'll awaken our spiritual connection, which is what Prthu Maharaj says as well. He says, when the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of saffron dust, the forgetful living entity of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. So that's our, our spiritual advancement, our, when we get to Paramatma realization, Brahman realization, Bhagavan realization, and going through the yoga ladder, that's through the mercy of devotees. And it's in this, like I said, like the saffron is the spark, and if we are able to inhale some of that spark, then that will fan our progress, and it'll help us overcome our Maya and our illusion. So ultimately, he says, devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusions about the value of life. Which, what does that mean? It's, we have these questions of what is our true purpose? What do I want to do with my life? What is material? What is spiritual? What is reality? What is illusion? All of those things, all we have to do is just hear from devotees. And we hear from pure devotees, we'll be able to answer all of those questions. And and here Prthu Maharaj asks for the benediction, that he says, therefore I do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. So like many great personalities, he's asking for association and the opportunity to serve the Lord. So this verse is important because it kind of summarizes that what I just said. It says the main thing here is, if one in association of pure devotees hears even once the glories of your activities, he does not, unless he is nothing but an animal, give up the association of devotees. So Prthu Maharaj is saying, if you are even somewhat smart, you're not an animal, then you'll understand that hearing, you'll be able to understand that, serving the Lord, glorifying the Lord is what's truly important in life. And even if we hear it once, we will be, we will be hooked, and we won't give up the association of devotees. We won't give up spiritual progress, because doing so would be like just being like an animal. We are eating, sleeping, mating, defending, instead of performing spiritual devotional service and progressing in the spiritual life. So what's the effects of association? It's more association, right? And that's the main thing. If we hear about the glories of the Lord from a pure devotee once, then we should have, if we are truly smart and we understand what's right, and we will make it so that we have more association. And if we're sincere, the Lord will also give us more association. And we always say, right, if we have to, the only way to get rid of our bad qualities is to engage in something else. And the best way to engage is to performing devotional service. So naturally, by more association, we will reduce our material activities, and then that will help purify ourselves in Ananta Nirvritti. I will go a little faster for time. So this verse is one of those verses where I thought it was very interesting. Prthu Maharaj says, I wish to engage in serving you, just like Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi. And he makes a point that I might even quarrel with goddess Lakshmi, because we are both trying to do the same service. Prabhupada explains that, the last 2 points here are important, that goddess of fortune serves the Lord in Madhurya Rasa. So she's in that, in that rasa, but Prthu Maharaj, who is intent on serving the lotus feet of the Lord, is on the platform of Dasya Rasa. So, that's how we should understand it. And then Prabhupada also explains that, it's not really quarrel. It's in the spiritual world, competition and service does not lead to any envy, but rather it inspires others to serve the Lord more. So that's the main points I had here, and I'll go to the next verse. This verse also is continuing on that note of quarreling with Goddess Lakshmi. Prthu Maharaj states that he hopes not to interfere with Goddess Lakshmi, and that he says, "I'm hopeful that even though there is some misunderstanding, you will take my part, for you are very much inclined to the poor, and you always magnify even insignificant service unto you." So what I took away from this is the Lord favors those who are truly surrendered, and you will always, glorify and protect his devotee, and you will give up everything to protect the devotee. And we've seen that many times in Bhagavatam. And then the other important point is, and I thought it was interesting, is he says there will be misunderstanding. And Prabhupada explains that, we have to kind of understand the higher purpose and bigger picture, because it's not a real competition. It's just that, everybody wants to serve the Lord. And we even though Goddess of Lakshmi may become angry, it's not that, Prthu Maharaj might have done something wrong in serving the Lord. It's just that that's the mood in which she is serving the Lord, versus this is the mood in which Prthu Maharaj is serving the Lord. And then the last few verses, so this is where Prthu Maharaj makes it kind of clear what the outcome is of serving the Lord, right? And then in what way one should surrender. So this verse, he says, only by devotional service can one be relieved from the illusions of material existence. And I think we all know that from all of our classes and reading, that devotional service is the only way to escape this material world. And the other piece here is, in the next line, he says, "Oh my Lord, there is no reason for the liberated soul to take shelter at your lotus feet, except that such souls are constantly thinking of your feet." And what the realization I had here is, when we surrender to the Lord, we should surrender unconditionally, right? If we surrender with condition, we have some desire, and then when that desire is fulfilled, we may stop thinking of Krishna, because we might be thinking of Krishna only because we have that issue or trouble, and we want Krishna's help to overcome that. But that's not how our relationship should be. It should be that we should be surrendering unconditionally, and whatever happens, whatever outcome it is, we approach it from a big picture perspective, and we take shelter of devotees and guru to deal with it, rather than being attached to a particular outcome. So we should be nishkama devotees, right? Nishkama, without desire and without expectation. Prabhupada in the purport explains here that this verse also highlights the process of how somebody comes to devotional service. So somebody might start with being a karmi, which means they have some desire, so they're approaching the Lord with that desire. Then they might become a jnani, which is they realize that desires are not good for you, and that they cause bondage. And then eventually once they connect that understanding to devotional service, then they can get to bhakti yoga, which is ultimately, serving the Lord. But that process is outlined here because Prthu Maharaj says first, devotional service is the only way to get to that platform, and then two, the mood in which you should be performing devotional service is unconditionally. You shouldn't have any condition, like karmis have some condition that they want, and then jnanis are not surrendering when devotional service, they're surrendering just to merge. And then let me go ahead and do the time. This verse, again, it's talking about the result, right, of what happens when we perform devotional service. And this verse talks about what we shouldn't do. So Prthu Maharaj says devotees are, enamored by the fruit of words of the Vedas, and that's the opposite of what you should do. And this goes back to, I think, in the very first verse, Prthu Maharaj says, why should I ask for something material? Because that will cause bondage. So what I took away from this verse is, suffering with material benedictions is the same as suffering without, both lead to bondage. And then Srila Prabhupada makes a really nice point. He says, the offering of benedictions in the form of material profit is never auspicious for a devotee. So we should never do that. And then the last verse is, I think, the most important verse, where Prthu Maharaj explains basically the mood in which we should surrender. He says, therefore, please do not ask me to take some material benefits from you, but as a father not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son, please bestow upon me whatever you think is best for me. So this is, I think, the mood in which everybody, we should surrender, right? The Lord knows what's best for us, and if we surrender, the Lord will give us what is best for us to become a better devotee, a better person, whatever it might be. And the main thing, I think, in the purport is, how will we know what is right or wrong? It's through guru and through devotees. So if we surrender, and if we surrender and we have association, and we listen to the glorification of the Lord from pure devotees, then through that process, we will automatically be able to know, what is right and wrong for us. And then we won't be questioning the Lord if something happens. And then I think the last point is, this is the last line that Prabhupada writes, and I think it's important. It's the conclusion of all the prayers. It's that the conclusion is that the pure devotee should not aspire after any material benefit from devotional service, nor should he be enamored by fruited activities or philosophical speculation. He should always be engaged favorably in the service of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. I think Prabhupada summarizes it very nicely for us, that, listen to and connecting with Prthu Maharaj, right? It's from the very first verse and on, it's surrendering, listening to the glories of the Lord from pure devotees. That's the takeaway that I had. And with that, devotees, thank you for this opportunity, and please forgive me if I said anything wrong. And Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prashanth Prabhu. That was such a fantastic presentation. So nicely you highlighted the key points of all the verses. You started out with telling the pastime, how the prayers start, all about King Prthu Maharaj, and then explained each of the verse. Some of the points I just noted down. I mean, there's so many good ones. I literally learned of space. Some points which really struck to me is, like, it's so important to have association, because more association you do, the more you will get rid of your material activities and material bondings, right? So that's a beautiful point. And we should hear about Krishna from pure devotees, from non-devotees. And when you hear from pure devotees, that's why that's why it's important to have association of sadhu sangha and gurus. So that's a great point, Prabhu. And also, devotional service is the only way we can get rid of Maya. Otherwise, we will get entangled. And nicely you explained the Bhakti Yoga ladder, how we reach there from the Karma Yoga to the Bhakti Yoga. So beautiful. And of course, the icing on the cake was the last verse where we should not ask for. Krishna knows what is required for us, right? Not ask for more material things. So beautiful class, Prabhu. Very nicely covered all the verses. Thank you very much for your presentation. With that, devotees, thank you all for joining the BhagavatSanga program today. It's always encouraging to have all of you all attend the class. With that, we will conclude the program today. See you all next week. Hare Krishna.